Hello, YouTube, and welcome to another episode of the In Your Head podcast. I am your host, as always, Jesse, and with me on the couch today, my guest, Andy Eklund. Andy, how are you, sir?
Jesse, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, sir.
Thank you for being on, sir. Thank you.
This is a real pleasure. Very happy to be here.
You're another one of the comedians that I've met from High Note,
Yes.
as most of my guests have been, so that's where I've been pulling my pool of talent.
It's a fantastic mic, ran by a fantastic group of people, including yourself.
Are you only saying that because I'm here?
No, I'm saying because of the amount of effort and showmanship that goes into it, and most of all, behind the scenes, the amount of work that you put on between running the different levels, the ones and twos every Wednesday, fantastic.
Ones
really.
and twos. DJ Octopussy is there
Yes.
every week, guys. So make sure you get out on Wednesdays if you want to see me in an octopus hat making music and making people sound good on stage.
Yeah, it's absolutely true. Absolutely true.
So I asked all my guests before we get started, I ask you to bring a story for the statute of initiation, something that you might have done that you're not quite proud of.
Absolutely. So one of my first jobs was where I was required to be at a place very early in the morning and open up, and it was I was really young. I was probably in my teens at this point in my life, and I one morning went out the night before, got completely trashed, I guess, and I overslept, completely overslept, missed my shift. I was supposed to work from like 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. and I missed it. And so rather than, just own up to it and admit to my boss, or rather than just quit and be like, oh, I was going to get fired anyway, I said, no, I'm going to make a stand here. I'm going to make a decision, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to it full ways. What I'm going to do is I'm going to have a friend of mine, his name was Tony. I'm going to have a friend of mine, we're going to get drunk the next night, and I'm going to have him beat the shit out of me. I'm going to have him go ahead and literally go ahead and just punch me in the face enough times to make it look like I was mugged the night before. And that it was completely, it wasn't my fault. I couldn't make my shift because I'd been knocked unconscious the night before.
Okay.
I've been jumped and I've been mugged, and this is what we're gonna do. And I am not proud of this. Most of all, I'm not proud because it worked completely. And to be fair, it certainly has added to my comedy. It really was a great time to add that to my stories, but I'm not proud of it most of all because I have learned the value of honesty, and the value of honesty in my later years has really shown me that automatically you want to try to be upfront and forward and admit your mistakes and not come up with an elaborate story and have your friend Tony beat the shit out of you.
So I'm gonna go on this because last week's podcast. So for any of you who have watched Paul Carson's episode, this is a perfect springboard off of that and a perfect lesson for Paul. Because Paul's story, for anybody who may not have seen it, and you may want to go back and see it, Paul wrote a paper for his college, and Paul wrote this great paper about his immigrant story, how his great grandmother came over, and it was a great story. Complete bullshit. However.
Oh wow!
And great story. The techer loved it. He got an A. Blah blah blah. Jeez. Well, then they submitted it to TED Talks that were coming to the town, and they wanted him to do it. And he just kept, and he's like, oh yeah, well, and it just kept getting deeper. So, as Andy tells you, folks, just own up to your shit and get it over with, because otherwise you'll have a situation like what happened with Paul. And if you hadn't seen that, please go back and watch that episode 22 with Paul Carson, and you will enjoy that story especially. So that is a perfect lead-in for that. So.
That is so true. Jeez, that's hilarious. Really, that's so funny.
It works perfect with this. So I guess that seems like a lot of what's going to be. I think that might be the new trend from me changing it from the the slightly illegal stuff to just the I'm not real proud of this is I got myself in deeper and deeper, because that story it's a good 10-minute story, and he just kept digging it and digging and digging straight down, and it's so it's I have a feeling a lot of these stories are going to be like that. And so fortunately for you, yours never had, he had to bail out at one point, and I'm not going to ruin it for anybody who isn't seeing it. I'm not going to ruin how it ends, but he had to bail out of it somehow. So
No, yeah, no, I would say that automatically, should my employers at that time have found out that I had lied and that this is what all was just, a big ruse, I think automatically one of the things that would have shown is a sense of commitment. The idea that somebody's willing to have the shit kicked out of them in order to keep their job really shows that, lesson learned. Maybe you shouldn't miss your job. Yeah. Maybe that was it.
It's an interesting way of thinking about it that I never actually considered. That the guy missed a 2-hour shift and he got the shit beat out of him for it. Yeah. Most people would just be like, I'm going to give you a write-up and just be done with it.
No,
No, you got the shit kicked out of you for missing a 2-hour shift. That's
exactly. It was
dedication.
It really
worked there.
And at the end of the day, I have to say, I'm better for it both ways. Learning that A, honesty is easier, and B, definitely learning that is everything worth having your shit kicked out of it? I don't know. There's those things you have to make a judgment call.
Gotta find where the line is.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're trying something new on this podcast now. And I'm trying something to get more into people's heads. So I'm trying a little word association game. So you're only the second episode that's actually gotten to try this.
Awesome.
So I'm doing a little bit of a word association. It's only 7 words. Okay. And I'm going to ask everybody. So whatever, the first word or, pair of words or whatever that comes to mind when I say the word, I just want you to respond.
Yeah.
And then this way I can maybe put them on our Facebook and show how everybody kind of responds and how people feel for each one. So,
that's excellent. I like that.
So here we go. So we're going to start. So, water.
Glass.
Okay. Night.
Armor.
Okay. Car.
Automobile.
Okay. Sport.
Player.
Time.
Watch.
Okay. Comedy.
Laughter.
Okay. And last one, work.
Oh, boring.
Okay. So there we go. So there you go, folks. That is what we have, and I'm gonna make sure that you go to the Facebook page. If you don't have it, I'll make sure I post a link below. Go to the Facebook page. We'll be able to start comparing these things, so you can see how all of the different comics respond to different words, and hopefully, maybe there's some insight to be gained from that for sure. So, because I see some definite trends from the people that So far between you and Paul, you can kind of see how each one sort of your responses were a little bit more almost just like similes. It seemed like for each thing that really it did seem to go right along it, and whereas Paul's, for anybody who watched last week's, was it did seem to be like like I said car, he said crash. I think I'm trying to remember what they were, but they were definitely not like almost like yours were. So
like cause and effect kind of thing.
Yeah, except for work, which I have a feeling I'm going to get boring a lot on that one. I'm starting to get a feeling for that. So to comedy, onto I guess the interview proper comedy, as most of my guests have been comedians that I've had on the show, and so I always do wonder what got you into comedy. What made you start and want to get on stage?
So I remember growing up, we would have these like lively discussions around the dinner table, and if we were having a discussion and it was like the whole question of who was, at the end of the day, like if we were trying to prove a point, at the end of the day, it didn't really matter if how much, whether like the points aren't going to be like based on like a debate, because it's not, or an argument, because that wasn't really how our family operated. We didn't debate each other and we didn't argue with each other, but we did discuss. I remembered or picked up on that the more memorable points to be proven were as far as the discussion went, were the ones that got the biggest laugh.
Okay.
So anything that got the biggest laughter were the points that were most memorable, and therefore you were getting your point across.
Okay.
So that always stuck with me. And then growing up, I remember how much I like my parents were very like they were well-read individuals, and they were like we had like at one point we had like 6 or 7 newspapers be delivered daily.
Jeez.
And like they read them all. Like they loved reading. And like I just remembered how much I wanted to grow up to be an adult who enjoyed the most out of life, who got the most enjoyment out of life. And I remember watching like a Jerry Seinfeld comedy special called I'm Telling You for the Last Time on Broadway.
Okay.
And I remember watching him perform. And then, of course, I'd seen Seinfeld, and I always enjoyed the sitcom. But I remember watching it and like realizing, wow, he certainly seems to be getting the most enjoyment out of life. Whether he's he's helping an entire audience, leading them into basically a shared experience of laughter, or whether it was on the sitcom, like they always looked like they were having a good time.
Yeah.
And so those two memories growing up definitely stuck with me. And then since then, I remember in high school, one of the reasons I ended up with Rutgers was I knew that I could learn comedy in New Brunswick at the Stress Factory, and that's where where I really did learn how to perform stand up, and I really enjoyed everything there. I think ultimately those 3 steps really helped me get into comedy. It's so interesting because I remember how people always generally out on the outside ask, how do you get into that? And it's like, well, on a regular basis, I think of things that I think might be funny. And then I enjoy telling them to an audience and being told by the audience, am I right or wrong?
Yeah.
That's what I enjoy the most. I enjoy being told if I'm right or wrong. I'm not always right. In fact, more often than not, I am wrong. But I'd say, all right, it's just a learning curve at that point.
Right. And I've seen a lot of that from different comedians and watching how they grow and watching the way each person tells that story.
Yeah.
And the style, because I think that's so cool being in open mics, because if you go to see a show, you're going there because you know the comic, you know what kind of comedy you're going to get. But at each open mic, you get a different style. You get how that person wants to tell their story, whether it's, going for straight shock value or, a funny series of jokes or improv or anything like that. Or like you said, like a discussion. And I love seeing all the different styles as far as the way it comes along. And I always wonder, like, what made that person want to get on stage? That's what it's always mystifying to me. Like, everybody has a different reason too. It's always it's so neat to hear, like, why. Like, was it like, I was at a place one night and they had an open mic. I got up, I loved it, and I never stopped. And you see the different stories, and it's so cool to hear where everybody comes from. So it's nice to know the history.
Yeah, no, definitely, you're absolutely right. I really like the fact that you have the vantage point of watching each performer get up, and legitimately because you're watching them work their way through something, a thought that they thought they had, that they're like, maybe this will work, maybe this won't, and that ultimately you get to actually ask yourself that question. Where is this person from? What gave them that kind of impetus to get up? So I like your vantage point. Your vantage point is perfect.
At times. I honestly, the only problem with my vantage point is I can't really get up and pee. Because, well, so for people who don't go to open mics a lot, who might be watching this, I mean, you get 5 minutes. You get usually 4 minutes, whatever the night tells you. Mm-hmm. Well, the problem is if you get up to go to the bathroom, you don't know if that person's going to cut their set short.
Yeah, that's true.
So you never know what you're going to do. Honestly, the only person who I can get up and go to the bathroom is during Ramon Bender's set.
Really?
Who was way back on this podcast, but he's the only one I can get up because I know he's doing a song. Yeah. The song is X amount of time. He's not going to be up there like a comic and just have a rough set and be like, all right, that's 2 minutes, I'm out. No, it's not going to happen. So that's the only downside of being there is that. So is that I am there for each set to watch it, and you do get to really analyze it.
Well, I'll give you an insight that the most amount of time that I'll give up is like 20 to 30 seconds. I will stand up there, even if it is the worst set I've ever done, and I get no laughs. I will stand up there for the full time. At that point, I'll stand up there for the full time, but because I deserve to be punished. But at the end of the day,
it's masochism, folks.
But at the end of the day, if I'm doing even a good set and I bail, I'll bail at most a half minute early, only because I'll end up on a good laugh, and I want to make sure I keep the energy going for the next comedian. Right. So you can definitely keep that in your back pocket. I won't go down early just because I I feel like it's such a disservice to not have to deal with the quietness, to not struggle against that kind of thing. So you can always remember, like, I will stay up there. It's not for my enjoyment, but for the sake of, I have to get better at this.
No, but that is a good thing. Several comedians who've been on here have said, do your time. That's one of the first things you learn as a comedian is do your time. You know, if you've got your 5 minutes, do your 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's what they say. You know, whether you're doing another show and you're doing 10 or 15, whatever it is, you do your time. And a lot of them say that, so that's probably a good habit to be in, even if you're eating crap.
Yeah.
Do your time for 5 minutes, and you know, and I've seen rooms where it can be, you know, a good set, good jokes, but the room is dead.
Really?
And we've had it where it was just nothing. Like, you just look at a bunch of mannequins, just
Jesus.
like, and they just wouldn't respond. They don't respond to the comedian. Nothing. Yeah. And I've seen rooms like that, and it almost doesn't matter what you do, so you can't, like, say, oh, I suck.
Yeah.
You just, there's nothing you can do, and hopefully you can push on and do your time. And that's I guess that's a professional thing, which is good. You've got to be professional doing this, because all the guys out there that do this, that march from mic to mic, night after night, I don't know how I don't know how they do it, but to stay professional and stay in your head and not just be like, you know, I mean, I could see myself just having a couple, you know, bad nights and just being like, that's it.
Really?
And just wanted to walk. I mean, I've only been on stage once. Not many people have seen it, thank God. It's been a long time, but you know, to think that I know, I'm like, I could just see myself just having a couple rough nights and being like, yeah, that's it. You know, I don't want to go back up and keep doing this to myself.
I mean, it depends on if you. So I know some comedians who just will automatically blame the audience or the night or whatever. And I'm a big believer in, like, look, if you feel like something was funny, there's a chance because think about how many times you talk to other people and things don't come out clearly, or they're like a miscommunication. Yeah. And these are just conversations with friends or family or coworkers. I think about that, like, you're now talking to strangers. Yeah. The odds are increased so much that you really are. It was just a miscommunication. You shouldn't feel bad that nobody laughed. It was just a miscommunication. They didn't understand how funny you are. Yeah. And what you were talking about. And it's just a matter, and I know that's a terribly naive and optimistic thing to think, but I believe that, because at the end of the day, it's not like you're taking cheap shots at other people or anything. So there's nothing that's not at all mischievous about your comedy. It was just a miscommunication. They didn't completely understand it. Yeah. So I encourage you to get back up, just because of the fact that I think you are hilarious, and I really do.
Not on stage.
Look for it. No, I
have awful anxiety, and I will tell anybody who knows me knows that I do, and the anxiety is awful. Yeah. Leading up to it, and I've talked about sports and stuff on here with people, and
really
knowing, like, I was a bowler back in the day before my shoulder blew the fuck up.
Oh my god!
And the rotator cuff, all kinds of problems. So I kind of gotten away from it, but it's fine. And when the one time I remember looking down the barrel of a 300, 11 strikes in the bag, looking down the 12th.
No.
And I couldn't see. I was shaking. Really? My hands were worthless, and it's so. I don't know if you remember years ago, Carlos Ruiz was busted for PEDs because he was taking, like, an anti-anxiety drug. He wasn't taking, like, steroids or testosterone boosts, none of that crap. It was an anti-anxiety. And I was like, I leveled with him. I was like, yes.
Really?
100%. I would say yes, because to be in a situation like that, and to be in any sports situation where, like, you're golfing, you're looking down a putt, you got a 6-footer that's right over there for $1 million, and you're going to stand there and look at that and go, okay, that your brain would rattle, that my anxiety goes nuts. The 3 hours before I went on stage were the worst 3 hours of my life. Wow. My stomach may well have turned itself inside out. And, really? And I'm like, I can't do this to myself. Wow. I can't. And it's not this fear of speaking in public. I'm fine with people. Yeah. I'm absolutely fine. Yeah. But being on stage and just the feeling like I'm going to forget what I was going to say. I didn't lock up. No. I did all right. And anybody who saw it would probably say it wasn't bad. Mm-hmm. But nobody fucking asked you, Kat. You weren't there. So, it's that kind of stuff that I'm like, no, I can't, because I know it's going to kill me all day, and it's going to eat me up. And so that's why when I see anybody like you or any comedian that gets up there and does it, especially new comedians, I'm like, God bless you, man. Here's to you for doing it.
Thank you. I mean,
yeah, sorry about that.
No.
The boom makes it a little tough to get out there for the drinks. So, but yeah, I mean, that's what I see when, trying to do it. And if I guess if I was on something like that, I guess it would probably, like if I was on an anti-anxiety med, I could probably do it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I want to go to the doctor and be like, yeah, I want to do stand-up comedy. Can you give me drugs? So,
well, I gotta say, when it came to the experience you share with the bowling and what you're relating to as far as the golfer, I have to say, I can only imagine the amount of pressure that's on you, and like how terribly, I would say paralyzing that fear like would have, and because like I know I am just a terrible athlete, like so like I would have no idea what it would be to even get to that point, so I can only imagine the amount of pressure that's on someone.
It's almost like anything. If somebody told you right now that, okay, I'm gonna give you $1 million if you can take this ball right here and throw it into that thing over there.
Yeah,
I'm gonna give you 20 seconds and you're gonna sit here and think about it.
Yeah.
And here, whomp, there's $1 million right there on the table. Wow. If you wouldn't get rattled, congratulations. I mean, you can see exactly where it would come from. Like, and that's the thought. Like, it was just a 300. All it was. All you get is this almost piece of costume jewelry for doing it. And yeah, that's really it.
Yeah.
And you get a ring. It's whatever. But it's that feeling of just like, holy cow, it's right there, and the anxiety just sets in, and it just it rocks you. It's hard, and it's hard to say for anybody who's never been into sports like that. Different sports, it's not as bad. Like I've asked other players, like, how do you deal with that? Like I spoke with a couple pro athletes, and that was always something that was on my mind, because I was like, how do you deal with that stress? And a lot of them, the ones I'd spoken with, were hockey players and football players. Yeah. And they had said, well, you don't really have it because you're not in that kind of moment. A golfer has the putt. It's you stand there. For a hockey player or a football player, you're moving. You're out, you're doing your thing, and it's just constant. So you don't have time to think. You don't have time to sit there and let your head stew and spin. Yeah. So I guess it's different for each sport, as opposed to, sitting there and really dwelling on it.
No, that makes perfect sense. I know that there are certain shows that I'll feel an extra level of anxiety for, and I'll certainly, in fact, I can think of shows that I've choked on, like, were ahead of time because of, that kind of mindset where I begin to think, oh, so much is riding on this specific performance, or I really want to do well. And, I can't think, the numbers are always in the favor of all those shows that I didn't have that pressure and how much better they've turned out. So I certainly can understand in that sense. I just, the reason that I always encouraging of other people getting up, such as yourself, is simply because of the fact that I really think that the world always needs more humor. Like,
well, that's no doubt.
Yeah,
that's there's no doubt about that. I will agree with that any day of the week. And honestly, for some of the comedians that come out, it still needs more humor.
Yeah, exactly.
It's mean sometimes. I don't oppose anybody who goes out there, and honestly, I see a lot of comedians day in and day out. But the problem is, there's a lot of guys who just go up there and don't really study the art, don't learn how to get better.
Yeah.
And that bothers me as somebody who learns at sports or activities and wants to get better.
Yeah.
To do something like that and just go up every week and grab a piece of paper and just yell about random bullshit.
Yeah.
It's like, you're not trying to get better. You're not learning what makes comedy work.
Yeah.
And there's some people who will swear up and down. It's like, don't go to these workshops, don't go to these classes. They'll say,
wow.
Like they're no good. You can learn a little bit from you learn more from like watching good comedians and learning how to write and form stuff. And I see what they're saying, and you see people who go out to open mics, and maybe it is a therapy for them, and I get it. A lot of comics, that's the way it is. It's like, this is my goddamn therapy. I'm coming up here, I'm getting it out of my chest, I'm sending it out, and it's cool to see them do that. But the comedy open mic, don't expect to get bumped up real high when you just come out and you're just, I mean, it's a shame. They're just not putting the comedy part into it. They just want to say random weird shit or offensive crap, and people are just going to stand there and go, what am I watching?
No, yeah, no. If you're not actually, and that's something, that's the only thing I have a really tough time is watching the same comedian try to do the same material again and again without trying. You can do the same thoughts again and again, but if you don't try a different pattern or a different way of presenting the material, then chances it's going to go similar to the way it went before.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very hard watching that simply because of the fact that I'm like, are they really? Where's the improvement going?
Yeah.
Like, is it really is it going to make them go any further? So, and that's the part where, again, my hat really goes off to you. You watch this every Wednesday, for 2 hours, you watch it and you witness the front lines of people just struggling, really struggling. Like, it's never like when you're studying to be a nurse, they just like, well, okay, it's your first day of nurse school. We're just going to send you to the ER, see how many people you could save, and then you have to watch them die every day. No, you're watching people die on stage every day.
Yeah, so, I never thought of it that way. It is kind of I guess being a comedian, it's just there's no other way to do it. You can practice in front of your mirror.
Yeah.
You can watch as much comedy as you want, but that moment when you stand in the lights, and God damn if High Note's light isn't one of the brighter lights out there, by the way.
Certainly.
But that moment when you get on the light and it's you on the stage and just a bunch of blank faces, it's like, fuck, everything just hits. I mean, it was a weird feeling. It really was. But, I mean, to the people who do it. But just go and get better. Try to learn. Like anything you should do in life. You shouldn't be happy with being just, this is okay.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be happy with that in life with anything. You should want to strive to get better at it. That's why if you watch the first episode of this podcast, I love you, Jeff, you're my buddy, but it was a train wreck.
Really?
And it was bad. I didn't know how to do an interview.
Okay.
The background was not here. It was terrible quality. It was bad. So I wanted to get better. I wanted to make it good. And that's the way you should be with stuff, especially comedy. Go up there, get the feeling out. If you like it, get better. And please stop doing the same joke. Stop doing the same joke. If it doesn't work it. You can tell it to the same crowd over and over again, and they're not going to laugh at the first time. They're not going to laugh the 12th.
I'm really impressed with their perseverance.
Let's call it perseverance. That's the best word I've ever heard for that. I probably should write that down because I've never used that. It's like, this man has perseverance. He's not ignorant or blissfully ignorant. None of that. No, he's got perseverance.
Exactly.
So you mentioned shows earlier. Do you have any shows that you're planning in the future that you've got booked or anything good like that?
So March 25th, I have which. Unfortunately, it's so soon.
That's going to be
So
that's going to be in the past as of this airing. Unfortunately, sorry.
No worries. It's but it's the first of many installments to come, which is digital sketches that I've started working with my writing partner Patrick in Philadelphia. We've started, Patrick Maxwell and I. We started putting on live shows last year, live sketch shows, and now we'll be transferring over to digital sketches. In the next couple of months. We started, our first shoot date was this past Sunday. We'll have a debut on March 25th, but then we'll be doing just weekly installments where we just drop sketches. Probably we're hoping for a couple each month, so it'll work out to being like one a week.
Okay. YouTube or
it'll be on YouTube. Will probably be so it'll be something where it'll be like the Patton Andy show, and then of course it'll be really great installments. So
it's
that'll
got a nice
be something
ring to it too. I like that.
It's perfect. We're really excited about it. Pat and I have been doing comedy for the last 3 years. We started an improv over at the Philly Improv Theater. And then we've just he's been doing some stand-up. You've seen him maybe here and there over at the Flying W, or at the I always say he's at the Flying W more often than not, but he's also been at the Tap Room occasionally.
Okay. A lot of names I may not remember. I apologize if I don't.
So many comedians coming through. But no, he's certainly he's a powerhouse when it comes to improv. He's really fantastic. He understands sketch writing so well. And so it's a real pleasure. So those would be the next things that I'd be looking for. Apart from that, booking stand-up shows, I haven't been super... the last stand-up show I did went well, but I've always been more in the sense of how can I go ahead and do more improv, more sketch, just because stand up is something that I'm only going to get better as I get older. And so sketch and improv are both things that I know that, like, at least with sketch and putting on the video shoots, it's something that takes so much time. I really want to do as much as I can at this age. Like,
yeah,
I just because, like, I don't know. It's interesting. As I get older, I've been trying to figure out what do I want to focus my priorities on. And stand-up certainly is my favorite, just because of how you take an idea. It's so wonderfully simple. You take an idea you have, as like whether it's something you had going into the shower or whatever, and you try to take that in front of an audience, and you see if you can workshop it to the point that it's that multitudes of people can relate to and identify with, and a shared experience like that they enjoy. That's always my favorite thing. Having said that, I am not as nearly as good as these as the other comedians on the stage. So, and I'm okay with that because I feel, there's time to get better.
Well, see, and that brings up something that I've mentioned to several comics before, was when I did try to learn how to do comedy and stuff like that. One of the things that I read was the Comedy Bible, and I keep plugging the crap out of this book. I better see a check sooner or later. But the book, it mentions some of the basic stuff, and it was helpful in certain parts about how to start with your rhythm and learning basic stuff. And I get it. It was good. Finding your voice, things like that. But one of the things that it immediately goes into almost right after that is like, hey, now go write crap.
Really?
And I'm like, wow. Now, not just like writing, like, okay, write your jokes. I get it. Like, oh, okay, I wrote something about a refrigerator. Write a joke. Okay, great. That's writing a joke. But this thing tells you to go into writing, sketches and and shows and stuff like that. And I'm like, so I've asked a lot of people, like, what? Apparently, your buddy's the writer as opposed to you. So I wonder, like, what makes somebody want to be a better writer? And some people were like, well, I used to read a lot. And some people love writing; they absolutely love it.
Yeah.
And some people, it's just like, I don't write. I mean, I write down my jokes and I plot them out a little bit, but it's not like they write a sitcom or a show. So it seems like for some people, that's the next progression. Is like, okay, I know comedy now. I'm gonna,
How do I? Yeah. The thing that I've learned in the little writing that I've done, and so I'll write sketches here and there, and the thing, what makes me want to get better at writing, I think the thing that's most interesting to me is the first sketches that I write. I always think are, okay, these are solid, like, well thought out. Here's a joke. You can see that this person responding to that person. There's the setup. There's the punchline. You can see this all working out. And then you have it in this format. It's only when you hand it off to somebody else for the proofreading, you realize, like, oh, did I get all the mechanics right? Did everyone follow these thoughts all together? So there's so much areas of improvement.
Yeah.
And that's actually the part that I enjoy the most, is there's a lot more for me to get better at. And so I really do enjoy that. That part I would say I enjoy. But I would say, as far as what makes a writer want to get better, I think it comes down to the mechanics and making sure your ideas come through. And then the other thing is, are your jokes really clicking and making sense that it's the same pattern?
Yeah.
Or what they call as game. Like, are you following the same game throughout the whole sketch? And then the last thing I always try to remind myself is what Stephen King said about writing, which is that, like, it's really the closest thing we have to like telekinesis. The idea of, like, how does, like, one thought in one person's mind translate to another person's mind? And it's like, what they're reading on paper, does it paint the same picture? And that's the part that I always get really interested in. There's a great book on writing by Stephen King, which is a really interesting way of exploring his writer's toolbox, for instance.
I would figure he's got the hang of it by now.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. I think he's definitely got a bright future ahead of him.
That's a good way to put it.
He's an up-and-comer. Guys, keep an eye out for Stephen King. He's going to be hitting a bookshelf near you.
Yeah, maybe this week, maybe the week after, maybe both. God, that's probably something that somebody I wish I could look up. I try to keep my cell phone down here, but I kind of wonder, like, how many Stephen King books are there, like that thing? Like, we're sitting here joking, but it's like, God, that quantity is huge.
There was I forget who he was in a competition with to see how many books he could write. Like,
yeah, it's just then I start to wonder, like, are you just writing for writing? When, is it
Yeah.
that you look at, like, did you paint the Mona Lisa each time?
Yeah.
Or is it just, it's going through the motions to make money?
When does art become a commercialized kind of endeavor? And I remember having an argument with one of my professors saying that, like, it really comes down to when you get the check.
That's true. Did you get a check? No? Well, then it's not art.
Yeah.
Although we're only good artists. I think, what is it? All the best artists are dead. You're not a good artist until you're dead.
Yeah.
So that's unfortunate.
That's what I think about loved family members. You're really not really loved until you're passed on.
Oh, man. I'm not going to get into this. I don't want to go down this road right now. It's way too... I don't want to go there. So... we probably didn't mention it. I didn't know if it's. I always try to ask people about it. But what do you do for your regular 9 to 5? Is it? You don't have to say like a company name. Right?
No, absolutely. So basically, I always try to. Do you ever watch the show Parks and Rec?
No, I did not.
No, it's okay. It's quite all right. There's a character named Jerry Gergich, who's just like just the perfect local government drone who just like plows through a lot of tedious
bureaucratic.
Bureaucratic paperwork. Now, I don't work for a government. I work for a private company, but the private company has to comply with like a lot of bureaucratic laws.
Right.
And so I'm the person, the what they call like the technical permit coordinator, whose job is to fill out all of these bureaucratic papers, and it brings me so much satisfaction. Just
you guys are wondering, the bullshit's just out of frame. I don't know if you guys can tell.
I just love tedious paperwork. I go there every day, and I just sit down and I just fill out just similar forms, just township to township, and just send them off and be like, there we go. Like, they've got their little permit application.
And this is why you do comedy.
Yeah, this is a really big break. This is it. This is everything. So before this, I used to be a third-party contractor for Anheuser-Busch and Pepsi. So I would sell their freight on the open market for just freelance truck drivers to pick it up.
Okay.
I was good at this. I enjoyed this. This was a blast. I would spend on the upwards of 4 to 5 hours on the phone every day, talking to different freight brokers, people who were purchasing the freight, and they would basically for their drivers. And I would to go back and forth about the pricing and about the pickup and the drop off and give them details. And I did that every day. I love that. It was a fun job, mostly because
that's interesting. That can keep you going all day, it seems like.
Yeah, it can. Oh my gosh, my favorite thing was when they would have issues. Like, for instance, I would find very cheap drivers who had very poor insurance ratings. And I would have to explain to my bosses that they were the underdog. That they were on the rebound of getting their insurance corrected with the federal DOT. And we just need to give them this chance so that they could earn back what they deserved, the rare shake that they deserved. And
that's got to be a hard sell right there.
Oh, I was so good. I was so good at compelling and giving people this reason to trust them. Now, did it always work out? No. I remember one night I got a call from a receiving facility in Texas that was explaining to me that my driver was drinking the beer. So yeah, I can say that it didn't always work out, but I'm just saying, as someone who's optimistic as myself, they're out there. There are these good drivers.
They just need a chance.
Yeah, they need a chance, and we're gonna give them that chance. Oh gosh.
Man, I wonder why you're not at that job anymore.
Oh, my friends are going on a 2-month road trip, and I said, all right, I I have to move on. This is the road trip of my life. And so we went,
Oh, really? Was because of that? Okay.
Yeah, no,
I didn't know if your boss was tired of ending up putting the merchandise in the hands of
they were
truck
yeah,
drivers.
they were unhappy with that. they ran their patience with that.
So when you were like, I think I might have to go for it, they're like, ah, bye.
Yeah, no, there was a mutual decision of cutting ties. Yeah, there was Andy, are you sure you don't want to come back? And nah, I was just like, oh gosh, I got this road trip. But no, it worked out perfect timing. I had less than a week to dump my apartment in Pittsburgh and to pack up my dog, so I could drop my dog off at home and then join my 3 best friends from home and go on a 2-month road trip. Which every day I kept thinking, this is supposed to be vacation, and yet we're just traveling the whole time.
So I'm gonna have to ask, since you're one of the other few people I know that's been on a 2-month long road trip. So I'm gonna have to ask, where? Yeah, mine was a little bit stranger, but I'll get into that a little bit later. I don't know if I've ever told this one on camera, but
excellent.
Maybe yeah.
This is great.
So after this one, then we'll have to talk about it. So where did your trip take you? What did you guys go see?
All right, so we started. They were determined to do shore to shore. So we started down by Avalon, New Jersey, and we went in the Atlantic, and then from there we had to go. They want to see. I guess. I can't remember George Washington's residence. It's Monticello's Thomas Jefferson. We hit at Thomas Jefferson that same day.
Okay.
But we also hit George Washington's residence, and then we headed over to Louisville, Kentucky. We camped in Shenandoah.
Wow.
And then we went to Louisville, and then from there we went to Mammoth Cave. Then went down to New Orleans. That was a great time. It was for the Jazz Fest.
Sure.
So that was a fantastic night. And then we headed out. We hit straight from New Orleans out to Austin. Spent a few days in Austin.
Okay.
Perfect place. Can't get enough of it.
I'm guessing summertime this was, right?
Yeah. So we started last week of April.
Okay.
So we went.
Time,
yeah.
Especially if you're down in Texas, you don't want to go there in July. But
God, I couldn't. And then. The best part, my favorite thing, was we then went from Texas, from Austin, straight to Roswell. Now, Roswell has by far my favorite museum of the whole trip. It's a UFO museum that's $5. And
nice.
Sure, there are typos on the wall and some of the plaques, and it certainly looks like things that you could question, but it's just this big warehouse full of just a great time of an imagination of whoever put that together.
Oh man.
And then my favorite thing about getting into Roswell, of course, was we had just a lot of stress up to that point, just because I think when you start a road trip, the first 2 weeks you're really trying to figure out, all right, you're trying to negotiate where you're going to eat and who's going to pay for the lodging. Are we going to camp? All these different things. So you're really getting into it. And so Roswell, the minute we landed in there, it was great. We ended up at this La Quinta that hadn't been finished building. It was you know how you renovate a hotel and you hope to finish the renovations by a certain time before the hotel opens. They didn't.
Oh, okay.
So there's just lots of plastic sheeting hanging on the wall. I had such a good time. I really did.
Just don't mind that one of your walls isn't here.
Yeah.
Your room goes right into the guys next door. Yeah. It's all good.
It was such a great time. I remember thinking to myself, this is their best. Let's give it up to them.
It's the best New Mexico has to offer.
And then from there, we head over to Albuquerque. Oh, Albuquerque was a mess. We couldn't figure out where we were staying. It was great. Love every moment. Any moment where it was just indecision and just frustration because after a long day of driving, we don't know who's in charge.
That's what Dave D says, though. I don't know if you know Dave D. Don't trust nothing you can't spell. Isn't
exactly.
That what he says?
Yeah,
so
exactly.
There you go.
Albuquerque. Yeah. Albuquerque's a tough one. Then we spent 10 days in California. It was great.
Well, yeah,
couldn't go wrong. Yeah. We headed up to Oregon, where we stayed with my family. They were fantastic over in Portland. And then we stayed up with some of my friends in Washington, and then hit up Vancouver. Then came down. We went through National Everglades, which I think is in it's not in Idaho. It's in it's Montana, maybe. But then we hit we hit a couple of national parks. We hit Yosemite, and then of course Yellowstone, and then went down to Denver. Spend a night there, and then out to Wichita, stay with family. I got to rent I asked to rent a car because I want to go visit family on the outskirts of Kansas, and I rented a I didn't want to borrow the main car because, God, I didn't want to risk that. So I rented an economy car. And I get there that morning, and they're like, they're arguing with the lady in front of me. They're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry. We don't have any more of those cars." And I speak up. I'm like, "You can have my car. Like, I'm an economy. You can have it. I'll take whatever they're offering. It doesn't matter to me." And they're like, "No, you guys are both getting 2015 Ford Mustangs." I was like, "All right, I'll take that for $30."
No.
Yeah.
No,
I'll take it. I'll take that. Like, not a problem. And driving that through Kansas. I think what insurance was like $10. So the whole thing was like $40. I've been thinking to myself, this is vacation. This is what 2 months on the road is waiting for. And then finally we ended up to Chicago, and then we drove out to Pittsburgh, where I used to work and stay with some former friends, and then drove back. And honestly, and then made it all the way back to Avalon. And I have to say, like, the whole thing was worth it. It was completely worth it.
Hell yeah.
During the time, it is hard because you have to adjust to, every other vacation you go to a place and you stay there for a week.
Yeah.
And you like get used to just unpacking your stuff and coming up with, oh, what are we doing tonight, or what are we doing tomorrow? And it's just like, you're going to be there the next day and the day after that. You're not worried about, oh, do we have to get everything in next 24 hours? Everything we can. So there's like a lot less stress. On these kind of things, it's more stress, less time, and like you are constantly working. So that really is the whole trip in a nutshell. So sorry about that.
No, that's something, man. That's a hell of a